Good morning, Catalina.
Good morning.
How are you?
Very nice, thank you.
Good. Well, we're very pleased to see you here at Levitas visiting London. So today we're going to visit the mysterious issue of mushrooms and what they mean. So just a little bit about your background, Catalina. Can you tell us something about how you got into the sort of space of mushrooms and mycelium and yeast?
Well, truth, it has been my whole life. I was born into this space, into this kingdom of mushrooms, because it's a real kingdom. We have the kingdom of plants, we have the animal kingdom, and we have the fungi kingdom. So my father is a researcher for the Spanish government. He's a scientist, and he's a mycologist. So he studies mushrooms. So since I was born into this world, magical world of mushrooms.
Incredible. That's fantastic. So it's almost ingrained into your being.
Totally. They're part of me.
Now, mushrooms these days are getting a lot of press, and it's quite a complex matrix. So we eat mushrooms for food, and then on the other extreme, there are psychedelic mushrooms and then poisonous mushrooms. Are you able to summarize this whole kingdom for us in a sort of small version of what each of these actually do and mean, and perhaps demystify this mushroom kingdom for us?
Well, mushrooms are everywhere because, in fact, they were long before plants and long before animals and long before people, us, in the earth. So they helped the algae to come out from the sea and to build the first plants on the terrain. So whenever something happens, like there's a volcano or there's magma, whatever a new earth is going to be produced is always thank you, new life. It's going to come thank you to the mushrooms. They are the first that are going to come and transform that soil into fertile soil where plants can grow, animals can live. So they are the ones that are life givers. And then not only that, but also they have evolved incredibly, because think that an animal can move and can eat, a plant can produce their own energy with photosynthesis, but a fungus can't. So they had to deliver different strategies in order to eat. And those strategies made that they had to build into their bodies very complex molecules, ingredients.
Interesting.
That are enzymes that are gathering vitamins from the soil that would allow them to adapt to anything that could happen. So one day it's snowing and they still have to be alive next summer. Another day they're under a fire and it's burning and they're still alive.
Wow.
So they have to be so resilient. That's why they're called adaptogens.
Wonderful.
Because they adapt.
Yes.
And when they adapt, because all of this content that they have in their bodies, and we take them, they allow us to adapt. And this is beautiful. Because when we are under stress condition, for example, we need to adapt.
Yes.
If we do not adapt, then we have the different conditions or illnesses that are going to manifest. And if we are capable of adapting ourselves, because we're taking the mushrooms, then our organism, our cells, our metabolism, our organs are going to adapt and we won't suffer.
Wonderful. So in summary, mushrooms, or the mushroom kingdom, through scarcity, have developed creative ways of survival under extreme circumstances, and therefore have survived for millions of years because of that adaptation.
Exactly.
And because they're in nature, and because we're in nature, there is benefit or synergism by taking mushrooms, and we almost inherit some of their values by virtue of taking them in.
Exactly.
That's wonderful. That is just incredible. It's one of the best summaries I've ever heard about them. So thank you for that. The other thing is yeast, mycelium, mushroom, cordyceps. They're all terms. Could you summarize briefly the difference between each of these?
So the difference is the structure, the cellular structure they have between them. So yeast is one thing, microfungi is one thing, micro fungi are other things. So what we cannot see, and we need to see under a microscope, under a lens.
Got it.
What we see is micro. So what we see has a mushroom that we can distinguish, and then we have the yeasts that are all over. So yeast make bread, yeast make cheese, make beer, make wine. So we are breathing them the whole time because spores are all over and we are breathing them as well, of the microspores. So mushrooms are all over the space. They can live, on the trees, and because they have these strategies, they can help and live in what we're calling symbiosis. So they're helping the trees to grow. That would be the truffles,
yes,
for example, that we eat the truffle, but the truffle is helping the tree to grow better and to be healthier, to be a 40% even healthier and stronger, confronting a dryness, for example, period. Then we also have the strategy where they are saprophytic, meaning that they're going to eat what is all the dry material that is decomposing. So they are decomposers, meaning that if they didn't exist, we wouldn't be able to go to the wild because we wouldn't be able to walk. There would be all the leaves, all the rotten trees. So who is rottening the tree? Our mushrooms. That they're closing the cycle, biological cycle. So instead of having wood, we have specific nutrients, so other organisms can live again.
Wonderful.
And then we also have the ones that are harmful, and that they're going to be mycosis, maybe in the nails, maybe in skin, or in the trees, or in animals. They also suffer, for example, parasitic conditions of a mushroom. So these are the three different ways that mushrooms live.
Yes.
And because of these three so-called strategies, that is how they eat and how they live and how they behave, we can find them all over.
Wonderful.
All over nature.
Yeah.
Everything that surrounds us in this moment right now, there are spores. They're all over spores always. That if you put a toast or a lemon, you cut a lemon,
absolutely,
you will have maybe Penicillin.
Yes.
Maybe Musero. Maybe you have different species that are going to develop there. And it's not magic. It's that the spores are in the ambience. They sit down in the proper conditions in the soil that they're going to eat, and then you can see them.
Yes. Well, that fits with their capability to survive in almost any situation.
Exactly.
But it's interesting, they are part of the food cycle, the living cycle in nature, and support the whole process, including recycling.
Exactly.
Fantastic. So we talked about a little bit of toxic mussels, the ones that are a little bit dangerous. Living in cities like London, old buildings, damp, we have problems with mold. Tell me a little bit about your experience with mold.
Well, molds are those kind of mushrooms. This is exactly like in the kingdom of plants or in the kingdom of animals. You have good animals, pets. You have very wild animals that are dangerous. And in plants, exactly the same. You have really good plants and very difficult plants that are toxic. So in mushrooms, it happens the same thing. That's why it is a science. It is mycology, where we need to understand, study the science behind the mushroom to be able to differentiate what are ones and the others. Molds effectively are dangerous to humans because they install in our respiratory area. So they can install in our lungs, they can install, and they can then develop conditions of, when you have a constant cough maybe, or, headaches or so. And so it is not good to have molds. That's why it is very important to have dehumidifiers in the houses, in the whole spaces, and not have everything closed. When it smells very strong, it's important to open and to take out humidity from there. Yes. You don't want molds in your life.
Yes. Well, that again is a good summary. The fact is, mushrooms in one form or another are everywhere. They're in the air, and the lung problems are through inhalation. But of course, it also explains why people get mold in their gut too, because they may be eating something with the invisible mushroom on top of it. So that makes sense too.
Yes.
Wonderful.
I
Now,
would like just to make a point there that it's if we're talking about the molds, you have aspergillus, for example, you have mucor, you have but you also have penicillium. And what it's about penicillium? We don't want penicillium in our life. We do.
Yeah.
What happened with penicillium? Dr. Fleming,
Yes.
28th of September of 1928, he discovered that when he left some petri dishes that were not taken care of, he could see that bacteria were not growing. They were inhibited, meaning that they were not growing because a mold had fallen and contaminated his plate. So when he saw this, he understood that there was something that was not allowing a bacteria to grow. And he discovered the first antibiotic.
Wonderful.
And antibiotics made the change in history.
Yes, yes.
From
So an
life and
accidental finding, well, a situation
Yes.
that he understood, which is incredible, really. So they are super powerful. But it does bring up the point that we need to understand them at a molecular level, because they can be good, they can be bad, and hence mycology. So leading on to that, you expressed your passion in the subject. Been doing it for 25 years almost now, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So with that, you formed this wonderful company called Hifas da Terra. I guess that translates as sort of hyphae from the earth, which is a lovely name, yes. So tell me a little bit about why we should look at Hifas da Terra as our primary place to find medicinal cordyceps and medicinal mushrooms.
Well, we have a mission. And to me, my personal mission is to bring all the power that mushrooms really have in their bodies to society. So therefore, we've been studying very hardly for this last 25 years. We got to the point where I'm a biologist from studies. From there, 2 years ago, I did my PhD in medicine in clinical oncology.
Fantastic.
And it's the first thesis in Europe with the use of mushrooms in cancer, in clinical cancer in patients. So I really my obsession has been to study the mushrooms, to demonstrate that they are powerful, that when you treat them with respect and you allow them and you study them and you allow them to work in their quantities and with the formulations that they are very respectful with all their needs and not putting any excipients that are going to nuisance that are going to be noise for the mushroom. Yes. Well, then you can really get such a powerful tools for medicine.
Wonderful.
And so this is our mission, and our values are to really stand always on sustainability, on natural products, on bringing to the earth more than what we're taking from it.
Lovely.
And for me, it's a constant conversation with nature, whereas I do many meditations. And in my meditations, many times the mushrooms are calling me. And I go down to the roots of the chestnuts. My father, where Hifas stands, it's a place where he bought for when we were little. Lovely. So that we would be living in the city, and we had this house in the outs of Pontevedra to be more wild and growing there in the wild, in contact with mushrooms and trees. And so when I go, and he planted chestnut trees for me the day I was born. Fantastic. So my destiny was linked to the chestnut trees and the mushrooms from day one I was born.
Wonderful.
And when I go back in my meditations, it's always what they're asking me is study us, and allow us then be the one going out there and talking about what we can do for this society, to the world. And to me, this is it brings me a lot of respect, because I have to be true to those values, let them work, and let produce all their power, what they can do, and release their power with every formulation.
Great. Well, that sounds so beautiful. It's interesting you mentioned wild science. I love that phrase. I guess the other thing is this is really evidence-basing indigenous wisdom, because the Tibetans and various cultures have been using mushrooms forever. Um, but now we're living in this world of evidence-based medicine. It's nice that the study of mycology and your particular study is just evaluating this in science. And I think that's important too, because what we've understood here is that you do need to understand molecular structure to get the most value out of it.
Exactly.
That's amazing. So I guess now in real terms, what people like myself and my patients and the populations want to know is, what do they do next? And I think from our point of view at Levitas, we believe that there's no wrong intervention. It's a timing issue. And if you're going to get the best out of any intervention, you've got to look upon healing as a journey. And we've identified this journey in terms of the 6 R's. So what I wanted to do was perhaps go through our R's and your mushrooms and see if there's some synergy. Would that be okay for you?
Perfect.
So the first R we believe in is foundation restoration. Our body's like a city. It talks to each other through roads and trains and planes. And if those foundations of infrastructure are broken, whatever you put in, if A doesn't talk to B to C to D, things don't work. So we do believe that the micro foundation of the body needs to be fixed. And for us, these are things like vitamin D hormone, B12, ferritin, and also our natural hormones. In that journey, clearly with mushrooms being around for millions of years and being adaptogenic, I'm sure there's a place for mushrooms or cordyceps in that journey of restoration. So briefly, could you tell me which mushrooms or which products we should be looking at in that journey?
So to me, in the journey, which is a complex journey, because you really go through different phases with timings where you're preparing all the body to accept and make the most of the treatments in every phase. So to start, I would really go with one of the great products, which is Mico-Rei. It's reishi mushroom based. And this is the big key for anti-inflammation, for hormone control, and also for all what is to feel calm.
Okay.
So that is the first, in order to start the trip, I would say.
Fantastic.
And there we would be also looking at a booster that makes that Mico-Rei works better, which is ifadlentinen, which is very nice to boost up the effect. And I would always recommend vitamin D.
Yes.
Vitamin D,
yes.
We're lacking vitamin D, as you were saying, all of us, because we were created to be animals that went nude the whole day under the sun. Our body's built to get the sun, but now we're covered up.
Yes.
And even the place that we can get the sun, it's with sunscreen. So
that's right.
No sun for us.
Yes.
So we need high levels of vitamin D no matter where you live, really, nowadays. And we're all deficient.
Wonderful. So you mentioned Mico-Rei, and you mentioned vitamin D, and the third catalyst or booster,
which is shiitake mushrooms.
Shiitake mushrooms. Thank you. So there's the restoration world. I'm sure we could talk about it for forever, but that's a nice little summary. We then, once we've built the infrastructure, what I call the scaffolding, we then need to go into a process of what we call release. Unfortunately, we live in an environment where we're abundant with everything, but our cells are built for scarcity. And so as a consequence, we've built up all this debris in our systems, which we need to detoxify from. So we detoxify the gut using herbs, we detoxify the inflammatory fuel, what we call glycogen, through autophagy fasting, and then we decompress the liver, kidneys, etc. So again, where would the role of mushrooms or cordyceps be in this journey of release or detoxification, and what sort of products should we be looking at?
So at this very point, I would suggest Maitake and Polyporus, which are two mushrooms. Maitake is king for the liver, so for the detox phase. And Polyporus is king to move all the liquids in the body. So it's going to take all the debris and it's going to move it out of the
Wonderful.
body.
Is that through the plasma or the lymphatic system?
Lymphatic system,
Lymphatic.
exactly.
So
it's going to move all the lymphatic system, and it's going to also help, for example, if we have high blood pressure because of the lymphatic stagnant.
Yes.
So it's going to help there as well.
Super. So it supports the transport system on the scaffolding we built. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Wonderful.
And that would be detox exactly for with mushroom.
Great. So in summary, it's Maitake
and yes,
and
polyporous,
which
are in the formula that it's Hifas Detox.
Okay, so Hifas Detox includes both of them.
Exactly.
That makes life very easy.
Yes.
Great. Super. So once we've built the scaffolding, cleaned the debris, we're then in this wonderful place of repair. Mm-hmm. Now, for us, the repair really is linked to the lives we're leading, which are very sympathetically driven, i.e. our sympathetic nervous system from our limbic going down, purpose, exams, deadlines, good jobs. We just sort of now accepted this as normal, but truly it's not where our cells want to be. We can deal with short, sharp stresses, but this is chronic stress. And sadly, we even reward this sort of mechanism through material gain. So my feeling is that repair should be really about the opposite of this, the vagus nerve, which we term the rest and digest nerve. So tell me how mushrooms can have a role in the rest, sleep, for example, decent circadian sleep, and digestion in terms of supporting the digestive system, which of course is our primary immune system.
Yes. So focusing on sleep, rest, and also have, again, this hormonal control, that hormones for women are always key.
Yes.
We would be looking at a specific formula that's called equilibrium, that what is bringing is exactly that word, equilibrium. For once, it will be seen as a strength. For others, it will be like calming down.
Yes.
It doesn't do exactly one target.
No.
What it does is provides what the body is looking for and needs in that moment. So the outcome is not something that we can expect always the same to be. No. It depends on how the person in what moment is. So this would be Reishi plus lion's mane plus a little bit of Cordyceps. Here the Cordyceps is coming in this restoration of the mind. And then we would be looking at the restoration of the guts.
Yes.
Where we would be looking at a prebiotic. Mushrooms are a magnificent fiber for prebiotic use for the probiotics, which are our bacteria, and is going to help our bacteria, our microbiota, that I always see it as a jungle in different levels that are interfering ones with the other, biting themselves. That's what sometimes we have cramps and so.
Yeah.
And so looking for their space and their kingdom. So if we allow the bacteria to be fed with a specific fiber, they will be the ones protecting their place, and so producing the right balance of number of bacteria that we need.
Yeah.
And so that would be the Hifas microbiota. Wonderful. Where we're looking again at the different forms of fiber from the mushrooms.
Super. So this is very good. Mm-hmm. Just going back to the sleep, I totally agree with you. I mean, the body doesn't come in a linear relationship. We have 30 trillion cells, and I love that word adaptogenic. So what it does for one person will be different to what it does for the other, but it will help everybody. So this is very good news for Hifas equilibrium. As for the gut, I'm pleased you say forest. I always use the analogy, it's an Amazon rainforest with 23 trillion bacteria. And sometimes weeds will grow and take away the nutrients, and we need a gardener. Exactly. So I guess Hifas microbiota is that everyday gardener just to keep everything in balance.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's a beautiful way of putting it.
Wonderful. Well, we come from nature, so actually all the analogies are natural. Yes. So wonderful. So that takes care of the repair. Mm-hmm. We then kind of enter the most exciting phase, what I call is renew. So having fixed the scaffolding, cleared the debris, repaired some of the imbalances as we describe them, we're then into the next phase of renew. At Levitas, for me, renew is looking at super micronutrition. So we love the idea of bioregulator peptides, where these are short-chain amino acids that go into a specific place and heal. We love the idea of nootropics, things that support the brain, because we are now cerebral beings. 1,000 years ago, it was physical. food, water, shelter, running away from saber-toothed tigers. Now it's emails, phone calls, exams, etc. So our brain is working harder than our body. So in our renewal phase, tell me about how mushrooms can support this.
So for the renew phase, we would be looking at a lot of antioxidation, and the king mushroom in antioxidation, it's chaga. Chaga mushroom.
Yes.
So many studies are coming out.
Yes.
And also protecting from radiation. That is something that is really important, that we're not so aware, because it's not of our interest to be too aware of that, that we depend on so much. The
Yes.
telephone is not that good for us. But we do need to protect ourselves from those radiations. So in this renewing process, it's important that we're having that into account as well.
Wonderful.
Where is the chaga mushroom that is going to be protecting our cells, our body, from that nocive radiation that it's harmful for us.
Yes, of course, absolutely.
And here is a phase where we can still go on with the phase of the microbiota. So Hifas microbiota would also be of help here.
To detox from that level.
Exactly, to keep on rebuilding and closing all those tight junctions that we need to really, all the lining of the gut is really important, that we don't have filtrations there, and that all the digestion proceeds and really is working perfectly.
Yes, well, that makes sense, because once you've cleaned out, those threats are still out there. So we need to maintain a position of mitigating against those threats. And yes, radiation, it's an invisible intruder. We don't see it, but we like our internet working all the time very quickly. We want the phones functioning all the time. So convenience comes at a cost. And whilst we can't go back to the savannas, we can mitigate against it. So that's fantastic. So renewal and maintenance, really. So the next phase, again, is what we call reframe. When people get to a certain level of optimization, and I believe that optimization will never stop. It's medicine infinitum. We just got to keep digging deeper and deeper. And what is fascinating is that mushrooms seem to be following us in this journey. If they're good adaptogenics, which they clearly are over millions of years, in the next 100,000 years, there's going to be mushrooms that are going to possibly mitigate against our modern day risks. So it's a fascinating journey that you're going through and we're going through too. So the next stage, we call it reframe. What's next? And from our point of view, we kind of go into hormesis at that level. We talk about hormetic stress in terms of cryo, cold showers. Of course, the timing has to be right and the mindset has to be right. But what does reframe look like in the mushroom world? I've kind of looked at, investigated the products you do, and one of them that really strikes me is the blue compound, and it feels very much like the reframe compound to me. But perhaps you could talk a little bit about this.
Yes. Well, exactly, on reframing our life, going to the last but first step of this new life that we will have after this path, which, as we know many times, when we are educating our body and educating our mind, there's no way back.
Yes.
Once you feel better and you know better, you won't go back. And this is what happens when you are learning and teaching your body and your mind to really build the other values from the ones we have learned till here. So in this reframing that we're going to see, the king, I would say, is the mushroom that it's been come from the Himalaya. Nature has brought it to us in the Himalaya, and it's a very special mushroom that comes out from a caterpillar. It's called Cordyceps sinensis. And what it does, it enters a caterpillar. It lives with the caterpillar at 2,500 meters of altitude. So there's lack of oxygen. So what this mushroom does to the caterpillar, it just suddenly becomes a super caterpillar that runs even 5 times faster than the other caterpillars.
Incredible.
That it's more powerful, that can go higher with more lack of oxygen. And when the life of this caterpillar that lives even longer just finishes, then the mushroom reproduces, letting go spores to grow again. So from this mushroom, incredibly, that the powers of this mushroom are increasing libido, but in a very impressive way, and fertility, as well as energy. It gives you more oxygen, more ATP.
Yes.
So you feel strong, you feel powerful, you feel that that animal that lives in us comes back to life, that it was kind of slowing down and that was sleeping.
So back to wild science. Yeah.
And so this is exactly what we're bringing with the blue solution, which is a liquid form. It's a nanoemulsion that brings all the power and enhances the power of Cordyceps, with also other molecules like spirulina, which is an algae that brings the power of the sea also into this formula. And so when you can feel, when you take the blue solution, is that you're kind of reborn.
Yes.
Which is
wonderful,
exactly what we want to have here.
And it's interesting, some of the things that you may resonate very well with me. The squash players in the 70s and 80s used to go and train in the Himalayas in low oxygen scenarios so that the hemoglobin would get stronger. So when they came down, they were more powerful. Similarly, we use things like intermittent hypoxic, hyperoxic therapy for our patients, where hypoxia produces an oxidative stress. So there is a lot to be said about being in scarcity, and therefore things have to become more creative and therefore stronger. So it's fascinating. Going back to mythology, in Hinduism, Lord Shiva, who is the founder of all meditation yoga, is blue in color and lives in the Himalayas. So again, it's fascinating how, going back to mythology, mushrooms, and science, it all comes together in a fascinating way.
Absolutely. And when you go to the moon, the Earth is that blue spot.
Yes, isn't that interesting? Yes. Well, I'm very excited about this product, and it fits like it's, once you've cleaned out the debris, you only have the good cells to feed. So it's a perfect place for people to go at the next level. Wonderful. Well, I think that's been great. There's certainly a lot of synergy between the work you and mushrooms do and what we do. And I certainly think there's a space for nature across all of our 6 R's. I hadn't mentioned the 6th R. We call it represent. This narrative we talked about is intuitively common sense, not really a medical narrative in terms of the expression. And therefore, I think it's something that everyone can do. And also, once they get better, what we feel is through represent, they become not only an ambassador for their own well-being, but teach others. Because this way we can touch so many people in the world. So with that, I'd like to thank you for the time you spent. I know you're flying back today, and I'm very grateful. We've all learned a lot, and I think this is something that everyone should know about. So I'm very grateful.
Thank you. Thank you for having me in this beautiful space.
Thank you.